I'm going to talk about multiple streams of income, and I believe each one of us can do that. I'm going to walk you through a process, and I hope that at the end of the day you'll find something beneficial that you can go and apply to your life. When it comes to money matters, I say that little drops of water makes a mighty river, not an ocean, a river. The reason I say river, because ocean is static, river flows. Because money matters is not just how much money you can accumulate, but how much flows into your income stream. So the key word to feeding your river is the word flow. Something must flow into your income source. There must be a flow, and it must be a flow with different levels of predictability. Some things flow very slow. Some have high current and flow. Some flow very strongly. Some flow weakly. But you have to have a flow. Something must flow into your income source. I want to just show you how it works out. Now you would see that there is a structure there I call the river, and that river is your income. Your income is what comes in. But that income is fed by revenue sources. And the revenue sources you call the streams. So the revenue sources are flowing, and they come not just from one source. They come from different sources, and they flow into that river. That river continues to flow, and what flows out of that river becomes your means for expenditure, what you're going to spend, your costs, and so on. At the end of the day, you must have something in that river all the time. So God wants us not just to have only one source that flows into our river. There must be different sources that flow into the river. The water from the stream is your revenue source. The water in the river is your income. Now, for the next 2 minutes, I want everybody to take a sheet of paper or your notebook or your iPhone, wherever you take your notes, or your iPad. And I want to just give you an exercise. You may not be able to complete it today, but the next 2 minutes, write down the streams of income that flow into your river. Just write them down. What kinds of sources do you get your income from? Maybe where you work, tips you receive from people, income from some little business you do, some product you sell, whatever. And try to figure out how many streams flow into my river. The last time I did this, I had 13 streams flowing into my river. 13. A lot of people have only one. Some people have two. Some have just about three. But the more streams you have, the more water in your river. And if you're limited, don't get frustrated. We will find ways by which you can expand the streams. But it's always important to ensure that there is a flow. Now, some of the streams that flow into your income river may flow once a week. Some flow once a month. Others flow every quarter. Some flow every 6 months. Some once a year. Some once every 2 years. But it's a flow. It's predictable, and you can count on it that every year that stream is going to flow, or every month that stream is going to flow, or every quarter that stream is going to flow. So you have to capture all of that, have a mental note of it. And if you're not able to do it all today, go home and think through it. What are the streams that flow into my river? The second exercise we're going to do, I'm just going to give you a process by which you can calculate your worth, your hourly worth. So it's a very simple process. You look at your monthly income. Just think of monthly income, how much you make a month from all the streams. Do an average. So in a month, how much do you make? You multiply it by 12, and that will give you your annual income. And then you divide it by the figures there. If you do an 8-hour day, you divide it by 2. Number 4, you have to set higher financial targets each year, because inflation is going to eat your income. Inflation is going to reduce what you earn. If you earn £100 this year, next year that £100 will be less by a couple of percentages. And if you go at that rate and you earn the same amount of money without increasing your target, you will end up with depreciation. or depreciated value of your income. So every year you must set new targets. Now, I did these things just without anybody telling. I set financial targets, and I've been doing that for much of my life. Every year I said, well, I want to earn so much. I want to move from this level. I want to be able to make this amount of money and find ways in which I can attain to my targets. And number 5, very important, there will come a time when you cannot work actively. Prepare for that time. Invest for your retirement. Whether you like it or not, your body cannot take constant work actively. So you must prepare for the time when you are not actively engaged in work. I believe retirement time must be the most enjoyable time for everybody. Everybody should look forward to retirement, when you can relax, cross your legs, recline in the easy chair, and let the money flow. You can go on vacations without hindrance. You can take care of your grandkids and spoil them. If you're a man, you spoil your wife. If you're a woman, you spoil your husband. If you're not married, spoil yourself. But you have to look forward to that day when you can really enjoy life after giving about 50 years or 40 years of active service, to just take a break, travel around the world, see nice places, and just breathe in the air, smell the roses, observe art, go to the opera house, listen to beautiful orchestral music, go to the museum, watch nice paintings, sleep, wake up at 12 in the afternoon, in the noon, and have no problem of anybody firing you. No deadline to meet. Just enjoy life. I believe there must be a Sabbath for everybody. Everybody must have a Sabbath, a time when you do nothing except just enjoy life. But you know, retirement can be very scary, and if you don't prepare for it, it can really be a very horrible time on earth. And for most people, that's what retirement is. No pension system can take care of your needs permanently. You have to take charge of that. Oftentimes we hear about the importance of diversifying investments, which is very important when you're doing investments, but I believe diversifying our income streams is just as important, particularly in very difficult economic times. So what are the tools we're going to use to grow our income stream? What tools do you need to grow your income streams? The first thing you need is predominant skill. What stands out? What skill stands out predominantly in your life? Now remember, I didn't say predominant profession. I said predominant skill. And I'm going to explain why I say that. Now, I am a pastor. I suppose you know that by now. That's my profession or my vocation. Now, we don't like to call it profession. We like to call it vocation because it's holy. But that's my profession. You don't earn money by your profession. You earn by your skill. So in terms of income, I don't think of myself in relation to my profession, because if I do that, I limit my effectiveness. I think of myself as a communicator, a trainer, a consultant, an advisor. Those are skills. They are not profession. I am a communicator, I'm a trainer, I'm a consultant, I'm an advisor. Now I can use those gifts on Sunday morning in my church. I can also use it on Monday morning doing corporate training for a multinational company. Because now I'm free from the tag of a profession. I am using skills. Once you separate your profession from your skills, you now can see the scope of what you are going to. Oftentimes we hear about the importance of diversifying investments, which is very important when you're doing investments, but I believe diversifying our income streams is just as important, particularly in very difficult economic times. So don't just think of your profession. I know you have a profession, you call yourself by whatever profession, I'm a lawyer, and so on and so forth. Yes, that's your profession, but what are the skills you use as a lawyer? What are the skills you use as a doctor? What are the skills you use as a carpenter? What are the skills you use as a hairdresser? Most hairdressers have a lot of skills. They are confident. They're able to listen to people's secrets. They're able to engage people in conversation. They are all skills you develop. Some skills you develop unconsciously, but you just find out you're able to do it. After having been pastor for so long, teaching, preparing, I just realized I can teach, I can instruct, I can train. I've trained people who were poor, and I've helped them to pick up professions. Then I said, why not? Why don't I repackage this skill in the corporate world, no scripture verses, and go and make money with it? And I do that. All right, so it's skill. Now somebody would say, well, but you are called. Yes, that's my vocation, but I have skills. And you don't make money simply with your profession. You make money with your skills. So take time, think through your predominant skills. What do you do? Are you a trainer? Are you a communicator? Are you a confidant? Are you an advisor? Are you a consultant? Are you an inspirer? Are you a motivator? Are you creative? Think of all those things. Do you have a sense of color and shapes and structures? Can you put things together? Can you organize? Those are your predominant skills. Secondly, you have to consider your secondary skills. I see my predominant skills as communication, training, advising, consulting. But I have other secondary skills. I have a sense of color. I have a sense of art. I think I'm pretty good with those design, because in my previous life I used to do a lot of that. But those have become my secondary skills. I need those. And everybody has got secondary skills you have developed. Sometimes you develop them by virtue of having done something over a long period of time, or you've worked somewhere for a long period of time, or by association you pick up all these skills and you realize, oh, I can do that, I can do that, I can do that. Your predominant skills are important. Your secondary skills are important. Thirdly, you need hobbies and interests. Things you love doing for fun but tend to be quite good at. It could be playing golf, playing football, understanding football. You know, it's amazing the number of people who understand football these days. You know, it used to be that only football coaches understood a football game, field and defensive midfield, and who is a box-to-box player. And I said, this is skill. These are, what are you doing with all that skill? And I'm going to show you. You can use all of that to make money. Because everything you learn in life can be sold. Everything you learn in life. Don't throw away your expertise. You can make money. It may not be huge monies. You can make a lot of passive money with your hobbies, your interests. Then you need financial reserves. Save money. Money you have saved. There could be monies tied up in assets, but money that can be used, liquidity, or you can liquidate very quickly as cash and use to do something of value. In order to deploy all of these, you have to have money-making competencies. So what do you have to do? You have to sharpen your known skills. You have to grow new skill sets. You have to develop efficient work habits, which is very important. Now, normally when I tell people the kinds of things I do, they ask me the question, is always predictable. So, do you have time to rest? I mean, how are you able to do all of these things? It's simply efficient working habits. I don't need too much time to do a lot of things I do. I'm a pastor of a local church. I'm an overseer of a big church denomination. I'm chancellor of a university. I'm a chairman of a bank. I'm a chairman of a pharmaceutical company. I work with an ICT company. I sit on various boards. I run my private consultancy. I sit on think tanks, on advisory boards. I do so many of these things, and I still jog, and I lift weights, and I still love my wife. Now, so how are you able to do all of these things? I don't need eternity. It's just efficient work habits. And the skills you develop along the way to help you to make decisions very quickly, to manage your time more efficiently, and to be able to think through the solutions that people struggle with. And I just realized I could do that. I mean, I didn't have banking training, but I was chairman of a bank. And, I was intimidated the first time. I said, wow, what am I going to do? I'm just going to make a mess of myself. But, money is so easy to understand. Just find out where it's coming from and where it's going. And that's it. That's it. Where is the money coming from and where is it going? Track it. And, I sit down there and I have all these bankers and people with all kinds of banking degrees. And I ask very simple question. What about this? What about that? Everybody says, we haven't thought about that. It's just common sense. You look at facts, you query the facts, you demand answers from the facts, and you get the answers. It's not that hard if I can do it. And I was horrible with mathematics, still horrible with mathematics. But I realized really in finance, you don't need serious mathematics. It's just addition, subtraction. That's all. Income, cost, expenditure, net And I could do addition, I could do subtraction, I could do some multiplication, some division. If it goes beyond that, I'm just blank. But I just realized all you need to do is add up the numbers, subtract, and be detailed and be logical, and you understand it. It's not that tough, really. Many times we allow things to intimidate us. You look at a financial statement, wow, what does that mean? It doesn't mean much. It's addition and subtraction. That's all. Just follow the numbers. Numbers tell their own story. So you have to have efficient working habits, time management, good cooperation with people, team building, inspiring people, be a good person, be able to work with other people. Monitor social needs and trends. Find out what people need, what's happening in the marketplace, what is happening to people, because the need of society is always a business opportunity. If people are spending too much time in traffic, means that there are things they're not able to do and may need somebody to do for them. Somebody to take care of their groceries, somebody to cook for them, somebody to help them to solve some problems that they're not able to solve. So check what the society is doing to people and find solutions. Monitor social needs and trends and build useful contacts. Don't burn bridges in life. Make good friends. Connect with people. Don't make unnecessary enemies. If an enemy is a useful ally, keep him. Hate him, but keep him. That's why you have a European Union. And the English don't like the French, but you need them. So you smile. The Germans don't like the French. The Italians don't like the Spaniards. But they have to work together. Otherwise, America will eat them up. Now, even almighty United States, they don't like Mexicans. They don't like Canadians much. But they have to come together because China wants to eat them up. So you always have to realize you don't need to like a person for him to be a useful contact or an ally. It's not just about personal like or dislike. It's about usefulness. Are they useful to you? Can you use that contact? Can you use that connection? So build useful contacts. And sometimes as Christians, I have people ask me all the time, can a Christian work with an unbeliever in that environment? I know it's always a difficult choice to make, but I don't go to work to share fellowship. When I sit with people at the board, we are not praying and worshiping God. We are solving a financial problem. I need their brains, not their spirit. I could witness to them later on, but that's not why I'm there, because we are engaged in an endeavor and I need their brains, I need their input. And they may not love Jesus, but they love the numbers.